for everyone. Donald Trump failed, completely and totally failed to deliver on his signature campaign promise of building a wall and Mexico paying for it. We all remember that. Now he's in a new phase, trying to do anything to get the wall paid for, raiding billions of dollars from the U.S. military for this construction. Now, here's the news. Donald Trump diverting $3.6 billion today that was already designated for U.S. military construction projects in order to do things that he can argue will amount to a wall. This delays, by one count, 127 projects across the U.S. and around the world. Now, let's be clear. Donald Trump promised over and over Mexico would pay for this wall. Now, the military that he claims to love so much, he's overriding their judgments and plans to pay for it.
I will build a great, great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall.
The Pentagon is canceling $3.6 billion in military project spending instead to fund for Trump's border wall.
Mexico's paying for the wall, okay? That's it.
The Pentagon now says it'll redirect $3.6 billion in military construction money to pay for the wall that the president, remember, always said Mexico would pay for.
They'll pay in one form or another. They may even write us a check.
This does allow President Trump to say that he is working on his border wall as he runs for re-election.
This all started as a long-shot campaign to get Mexico to fund our infrastructure. Then it morphed into that government shutdown, legal battles over the limits of executive power. Now, tonight, we are way past even those policy challenges. We are dealing with an effort that is all about helping Donald Trump save face and claim there's progress. He's even admitting to aides that a failure here to get this wall funded and paid for and built in part would be a letdown to his supporters and a, quote, embarrassing defeat. So just take that in. That's not a concern that Americans are footing the bill or how this affects the military, which, as we're reporting, had other plans. This is just self-serving concerns for Trump about the optics of defeat.
The wall is being built. It's going up rapidly. It's, I guess most of you have been able to see it. We're building very large sections of wall.
That's not true either, which is why there's this desperate rush to find new funds. The Trump administration has not built a single mile of new wall. They've only been replacing existing parts. So that's a lot to take in, and it's obviously embarrassing for Trump. That's why he's furiously working to do anything other than let people remember that he failed, there is no new wall, Mexico didn't pay for it, and on it goes. So that's the fact-check portion of the news tonight. But we're not going to stop there, because these immigration policies are obviously about much more than campaign posturing. They are about people's lives. And as Donald Trump goes on this crusade of optics, we're also learning even more about the way he is using his authority as commander-in-chief, the way that children are still being separated from their parents. There's a new internal review out that I want you to see. It found that these separated children are showing and exhibiting obviously high mental stress. They're more likely to feel anxiety and abandonment than children who came to the U.S. all alone, which is not easy. There are also documented physical ailments because many of these young children, under the stress of these Trump administration policies, can't even process what they're going. One worker explaining, you get a lot of "my chest hurts," even though actually everything is fine medically. And there are heartbreaking accounts like this one. A boy, described as being around 7 or 8, was given no explanation as to why he was separated from his father. A mental health worker explaining he was under the delusion that his father had been killed, and he believed he would also be killed. And these are just some of the accounts that are dribbling out. These are children, so sadly we know many of them will be living with this for the rest of their lives, and the aftershocks and the PTSD. That is something Donald Trump has actually done and accomplished on immigration, traumatizing children while failing to get Mexico to pay for the border wall he long promised they would, while also shifting burdens over to the U.S. military. Those kind of facts don't make for much of a re-election campaign slogan. I want to bring in some experts now on these important stories. Maria Teresa Kumar is president and CEO of the group Voto Latino. Eleanor Clift is Washington correspondent for the Daily Beast. And retired 4-star General Barry McCaffrey. I won't speak to the other two panelists, General, but you certainly outrank me I will go to you first. What is your view of this, both in the way the government should run? You have extensive service within the government, and the military piece. Is it good for the U.S. military to have policy rerouted like this?
We know, just at face value, these military construction budgets in particular are carefully thought out over 5 years to finally, with congressional support, get the first year of funding for what is always a multi-year project. So this is an incredibly inefficient way to go about managing the U.S. Armed Forces, a giant enterprise. Ari, more importantly, having studied American government, taught American government, and served at the highest levels for the better part of a decade in Washington, we've never seen anything like this. It's unconstitutional to divert money in this manner.
Maria?
Well, when he says that it's unconstitutional, I used to work on appropriations, working a lot alongside on folks on the military side, on the defense, trying to make these plans. And it disrupts exactly where it's going, but it circumvents Congress's power of the purse. It basically takes a snub of Congress. And so when he says it's unconstitutional, it's talking about the balance of authority, recognizing that we have this balance of authority on purpose. It's written into the Constitution, and he's thumbing his nose at it. But, Ari, when you are talking about this president saying that family separation is his hallmark of immigration policy, it's not alone. He's also preventing individuals from getting flu shots so that there's not so if there's a flu outbreak, we've already had 2 children die under this administration because of the flu. He's preventing the outbreaks of mumps. I mean, it is such hostile environment to a country that actually created asylum and refugee laws. This is anti-American, unpatriotic, and we have to make sure that Congress stands up for him. We demand federal investigations, but congressional investigations, not just on his diversion of $3.6 billion of defense to go towards a wall that the majority of Americans don't want, but also with the fact of what he's doing on his hands when it comes to these unquestionable, his questioning authority when it comes to actually how he's treating these children.
Eleanor?
It may be unconstitutional, but I think he's going to get away with it with the blessing of the Supreme Court, because the president is acting under the guise of the emergency order that he put through earlier this year that gives him virtually unprecedented powers. And he's moving money around with the blessing of the Secretary of Defense. And the signals coming out of the Supreme Court in an earlier case indicate that they approve or they favor, by a 5-4 margin, executive power, and he's likely to get away with this, which I think is the most horrifying part of it. Presidents in the past, they have a war on poverty, a war on drugs, which General McCaffrey is very familiar with. This president is conducting a war on immigration, and he thinks it's going to be, or he knows it's going to be popular among the segment of the population that he needs for his reelection, and he's determined to get that wall built, and he will stretch his powers as far as they will go, and he's not getting much opposition. Usually, when you monkey with congressional projects that have members of Congress and senators who are using them to demonstrate to their constituents why they're important in Washington, I've noticed so far it's only Democrats who have been complaining. I'm cynical enough to wonder if they've cherry-picked the projects and know they're only going to get objections from the 2 Democratic senators of Virginia, or Chuck Schumer in New York, who's complaining about West Point being on the list. So I'm waiting for the outcry. We haven't seen it yet with this president. I probably won't see it this time either.
Well, and I think it goes to something that's very serious, General, even if people are at risk of becoming inured to it and normalized, which is you have a president who is willing to run roughshod over, as you put it, very carefully negotiated and thought out military-civil arrangements, which is probably not good long-term for the body politic. I want to play Jim Mattis, who was speaking about his departure from the administration on MSNBC today. Take a look.
I don't know how I could have spoken more loudly to where I stand than what I put in my letter of resignation and quitting a job when I had not completed it 2 years in.
General, widening out, how concerned are you about the relationship between this president and what we just saw there, the departed defense secretary, the military leadership? Obviously, within reason, their job is to stay out of any of these public debates, to let Congress and the executive branch work out funding and go forward. And yet, time and time again, we see things that really test how both the enlisted or the formerly enlisted like yourself speak out about things that don't appear to be a positive and fair balancing of how the military should run in a democracy.
Well, look, all Americans ought to be extremely careful about not politicizing the armed forces. And under the Constitution, they actually do follow all legal orders from the Commander-in-Chief, President of the United States. I think we actually, in the short run, need to be grateful. We've got Secretary Mark Esper, now the Secretary of Defense. He did approve this, what I believe to be an illegal act of reprogramming money. But I think as a general statement, so far, the Pentagon has remained non-political, to include with this wonderful man, Secretary Jim Mattis, who is worshipped by the armed forces. But we need to worry about it. The armed forces are a neutral factor to defend the American people, not a plaything of the President of the United States.
Well,
spoken clearly. I have to let the general go, actually, so I'm going to get you back in, Maria. But General Barry McCaffrey, thank you for your time tonight and for speaking on this topic. I appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.